Hello, Starshine. My name is Liz and this is my channel, Simsational Stories. If you have not seen my videos before and you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe. And maybe check out my Facebook page where this whole thing began as well. All relevant links are in the description below. And of course, if you're a Sims player and you'd like to download any of the characters featured in my stories, just search the hashtag Simsational Stories on the Sims 4 gallery. All original content is created by This Is Not Eric. Alrighty then. So, welcome, and what is up, Buttercup? Are you having a good day? Or a bad day? Whichever your answer, please allow me to distract you from your life and tell you a story, a Simsational story. Before I begin though, I'd like to issue this blanket content and trigger warning. The following story is just Sims, hey. I'm not going to apologise for treating them terribly, if that's what I've done, But I do want to assure you now that although I mean absolutely no harm, I completely understand if you feel unable to consume my content. Many loves, and we will catch each other on the internet elsewhere. Okay, so now we've gotten that over with, let's go. Today's story is from Over to Oberon, and we're at chapter 2. If you have not seen the previous chapter and would like to catch up, there are playlists available on my channel so you can hear the entire story in chronological order. The rest of us are going to move on from where we left off last time though. So without further ado. Already, young Oberon Down was following in the footsteps of his rocket scientist father, Magnus, who was delighted that his son was a budding scientist too, and had gotten him his own little science kit with which to experiment with. The two would then often spend time together in the evenings in their basement lab, working side by side for hours. Magnus and Oberon would also spend a lot of their spare time playing chess together. Being the offspring of an alien abduction, Oberon was a very intelligent child who was prone to playing up if not kept properly stimulated, and Magnus wanted to make sure that his son learnt to harness that mental energy appropriately. Magnus and Oberon's alien stepmother Kalaya were expecting their first child together soon, and they had no idea what to expect. Would the baby be like Oberon and be able to morph to protect its alien nature? They hoped so, but they didn't know. Their relationship was a first. To their knowledge, no other alien and sim relationship had ever gotten this far before. The closest similar situation that they knew of was also their own. Magnus had been abducted by aliens and returned pregnant. He had carried Oberon for 9 months in a uterine sac attached to his intestine, and remembered giving birth to him via caesarean. But when he took a DNA sample, with Oberon's consent, of course, he was shocked to discover that Oberon was in fact a full alien. It was a surprise, of course, but they both agreed that it sure explained a lot. Oberon and Kalaya shared so many mental powers, and obviously Magnus had none, other than an impressive intellect. It all made sense now. Magnus was still his son's genetic father, but Oberon was no half-breed. Magnus and Oberon may not have been the same species of sim, but they shared a close and loving relationship all the same. So many of their personality traits were the same. They even shared a favourite colour, green, and favourite food, aubergine parmigiana, as well as, of course, a love for science. Magnus and Kalaya's daughter, Cosmos Nimaru, was born the night of Halloween, something they always thought was rather perfect. She had a sneeze of destiny about her from the beginning. The little girl had her mother's natural green skin and her father's inability to morph. Unlike her brother Oberon, Cosmos would never be able to hide her inhuman half. Magnus worried about her. Kalaya's genetics had obviously won out in the one way that really mattered as far as concealment went. Their little girl had green skin. Cosmos was never going to be able to fit in. She would always attract attention. Although Kalaya reasoned that their beautiful little girl would have had that happen anyway. As the hero of Strangerville, Kalaya was considered a minor celebrity, at least locally, and she was used to getting attention from strangers now. She'd lost count of the number of autographs she'd signed at the gym. They could just tell the kids that the stares were because of that, couldn't they? Of course, Oberon saw right through that story. It was obvious who people were really staring at. He was growing up too quickly for any of those sort of tricks to work on him. And he didn't see why they were trying it on Cosmos either. She'd have to learn the truth sooner or later. Why lie to her at all? It was stupid. Oberon really didn't get how his parents thought that they could hide reality from Cosmos like that. And why'd they even want to? It hadn't been like that with his DNA test, and it shouldn't be like that with any other truth either. Oberon had a strong sense of right and wrong already, and this whole lying to protect her idea just went against that, to his logic. Oberon loved his little sister, and more than that, he felt like he respected her. She was only little, but she was a person still. Their parents may have thought that they were protecting her by pretending that she was normal, that they were all normal, but Oberon knew better. He told Cosmos the truth from the start. Their parents were just being stupid. He was an alien, their mum was an alien, and their dad was just a sim like most everyone else. That meant Cosmos was half alien, and that's why her skin was green, and sometimes other sims might stare at her. That was it. Like, yeah, okay, their mum was also the hero of Strangerville, but so what? Not that Oberon wasn't interested in what had happened back then. His parents had had a whole story of their own. And if he was being honest, Oberon had to admit that he was interested in basically anything and everything. But that was why he'd already snuck into his mum's office and read all her files on the investigation. Oberon didn't tell his parents that he'd done that, though. No more than he told them that he'd gone behind their back with Cosmos about the whole alien secret thing. Oberon wasn't trying to be deceitful exactly. It was just a calculated choice to avoid conflict. Besides, they'd muddied the water with their lies first. Oberon always did his homework, cleaned up around the house without being asked to, and was overall a pretty good kid. He excelled in scouts, was a great big brother to his little sister, and if he was rather emotionally reserved and methodical sometimes, was that really a bad thing? Kilalia said that aliens in general were just different emotionally. But then again, she herself had been raised by robots, and so they really still had no idea what was going to be normal for Oberon. They shared mental abilities and similarities, of course, but some things were always going to be unique to each of them too. For the most part, Oberon just felt like himself. He sure didn't spend as much time analysing his and Cosmos's differences and similarities to their mother as their dad did anyway. His dad was always asking him questions about his alien experience and how he thought it might compare to the human experience. In fact, Magnus kept a folder on the family computer documenting everything his son said about the subject, and a whole lot more than that too. From his own early ultrasounds showing the amniotic sac attached to his stomach lining, to Oberon's first school report, to Kilalia and Cosmos's latest blood test results, it was all there. Magnus would also perform minor experiments on his children throughout their entire childhoods. Nothing invasive, of course, as much as a tiny part of him would have loved to dissect and document all the anatomical differences between the two species. Magnus resigned himself to more simple comparisons, such as who learned to read first, Oberon, and who was best at math at comparative age brackets, again, Oberon. It was lucky for them that neither Oberon nor Cosmos were very competitive by nature. They were actually quite close, and although Oberon wasn't particularly inclined to investigate it himself, he found his father's work rather interesting and understandable at least. Cosmos didn't care at all. In fact, she kind of wished her dad would just leave it all alone and quit making such a big deal about it. What they didn't know or realize at the time was that Magnus wasn't just doing all this to satisfy his own curiosity. He had been working for over a decade now on a very secret project, one that would answer all the questions he himself or anyone else would ever have about his wife and children. Magnus had always wanted to protect Oberon and Cosmos, but at the same time he knew he couldn't, and shouldn't by his own scientific conscience, hide their alien selves from the whole world forever. It was hard to get the answers he needed without hurting his children, but with time and dedication he had finally succeeded. Finally, he could tell Kalaya. The government knew about her, about Oberon, and about Cosmos. But it was okay. Everything was going to be okay. By keeping their family secret for so long, Magnus had been able to carefully extract every bit of information they'd ever have been able to give, and he'd already submitted it before it could be asked for. Things changed drastically for the whole family after that. They were no longer confined to hiding themselves in the small town of Strangerville. They took a trip to the Solani Islands as a result and celebration of Magnus's progression and promotion to official extraterrestrial explorer. This was it. They no longer had to hide at all. Unless they wanted to, of course. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 2 of Over to Oberon. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can tune in soon to hear the next chapter. And hey, maybe think about sharing my channel with a friend. Or don't. It's your life. Anyway, bye!